The year is 200 BC. On the northern coast of Africa, where the Mediterranean meets the desert wind, stands a city that has ruled the sea for 500 years. Carthage. 500,000 people live within its double walls. Its harbors hold warships and merchant vessels from 3 continents. Its markets smell of spice, cedar, and gold. Temples rise above marble streets. Generals are gods here. Merchants are kings. Yet to the senators gathering in Rome across the water, Carthage is a wound that has not healed, a name spoken with fear and fury, and in 200 BC, the most powerful trading empire the ancient world has ever built is already walking toward its end. We recreate this vanished world using AI to help you walk its streets as they truly were. Stay until the end to see how this great empire, undefeated in spirit, is finally erased from the earth. Before we can understand what Carthage is in 200 BC, we need to go back, not centuries, but just a generation, to understand the world that shaped it. Imagine standing in the port of Carthage around 264 BC. The city controls the western Mediterranean like a hand gripping a map. Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, the coast of Spain, trade routes stretching to Britain for tin, to sub-Saharan Africa for ivory and gold. This is not a city. This is a commercial empire, run not by divine kings but by merchant aristocrats, men who weigh war in silver and measure victory in profit. For the Carthaginians call themselves the Punics, a people descended from Phoenician settlers who arrived from the coast of modern Lebanon around 814 BC. They brought their gods, Baal-Hamon, lord of the sky, and Tanit, the Great Mother, whose crescent symbol marks temples, coins, and gravestones across North Africa. They brought their alphabet, the ancestor of the one you are reading now. They built a city on a peninsula of land that juts into the sea, surrounded on 3 sides by water. They called it Carthage, the new city. By the 3rd century BC, this new city had become one of the great metropolises of the ancient world. Picture its double harbors. One rectangular commercial port for merchant ships. One circular military harbor, the Carthage, with covered berths for 170 warships, each slot fitted with columns and a roof, like a grand stable for vessels of war. At the center of the military harbor stands an island where the admiral commands, eye surrounded by water, seeing everything. It helps to look at the social structure to understand how Carthage works. At the top, 2 elected magistrates called suffetae govern alongside a council of wealthy senators. Below them, a class of powerful merchants and landowners. At the bottom, laborers, craftsmen, slaves, and the subject peoples of Libya and Numidia, who pay tribute and supply soldiers but share little of the city's wealth. This inequality will matter. From here, we move to the moment that changes everything. In 264 BC, Rome and Carthage come into direct conflict over the island of Sicily. It begins as a small dispute. It becomes the First Punic War, 23 years of brutal fighting, mostly at sea. Carthage loses. Rome, a land power that had never built warships before, builds entire fleets, loses them to storms, builds more. In 241 BC, Carthage surrenders Sicily, pays a massive indemnity, and in doing so, he plants the seed of a rage that will define the next century. At this time, in the years following 241 BC, Carthage faces a crisis that nearly destroys it from within. The unpaid mercenary soldiers who had fought in Sicily return to Africa and revolt. For 3 years, a savage war tears across the Carthaginian hinterland. Villages burn, commanders are crucified. The rebellion is called the Truceless War, and it is recorded by ancient historians as one of the most violent conflicts of the era. Ash is his family, the Barcids, who will is his family, the Barcids, who will shape everything that follows. Hamilcar is not content to defend what Carthage has. He looks west, to Spain, Hispania, a land rich in silver mines, fertile farmland, and warrior tribes who could be molded into soldiers. Beginning around 237 BC, he crosses into Spain with an army, his young son riding with him. He builds alliances, founds cities, extracts silver from the mountains of the south. His son watches everything, learns everything. That son is Hannibal. Picture Hannibal as a boy of 9, standing before his father's altar, demanding to come on campaign. According to the ancient accounts, Hamilcar agrees, but only after the boy swears an oath of eternal enmity to Rome. Whether the story is true or legend, its meaning is clear. The Barcid family has made the destruction of Rome a sacred duty. Hamilcar dies in battle in 228 BC. His son-in-law, Hasdrubal, takes command in Spain. Then, in 221 BC, Hannibal, now 26 years old, takes control of the Carthaginian army in Hispania. The soldiers adore him. He has his father's fire and something more, a strategic mind that his enemies will later call supernatural. From here we step into 219 BC. Hannibal lays siege to Saguntum, a city in eastern Spain allied with Rome. Rome protests. Carthage's government, dominated by the Barcid faction, does nothing to stop him. Saguntum falls after 8 months. Rome demands Hannibal be handed over for punishment. The Carthaginian Senate refuses. War is declared. What follows is one of the most audacious military campaigns in the history of the ancient world. In the spring of 218 BC, Hannibal leads an army, roughly 90,000 infantry, 12,000 cavalry, and 37 war elephants, out of Spain, across southern Gaul, and toward the Alps. The Romans expect an invasion by sea. No general in history has crossed the Alps with an army. The mountain passes are held by hostile Gallic tribes. The cold alone can kill. Hannibal does it anyway. By the time he descends into northern Italy in the autumn of 218 BC, he has lost almost half his army to the mountains, the cold, and the ambushes. But the survivors are hardened beyond measure. And Hannibal has something the Romans lack: the ability to turn the landscape, the weather, and even the enemy's aggression into weapons. At the Trebia River in December 218 BC, he destroys a Roman army by luring it into a freezing ambush. At Lake Trasimene in 217 BC, he ambushes an entire consular army in a gorge. 17,000 Romans killed in 3 hours. The trap is so complete that the survivors do not even know which direction to flee. Then comes Cannae. August 2nd, 216 BC. This is the moment Carthage comes closest to ending Rome forever. 2 Roman consuls command an army of roughly 70,000 men, the largest force Rome has ever assembled in a single battle. They intend to overwhelm Hannibal through sheer numbers. Hannibal has perhaps 50,000 soldiers. He places his weakest troops in the center and his strongest cavalry and African infantry on the flanks. As the Roman legions push forward and the Carthaginian center deliberately retreats, the flanks curl inward like closing hands. The Romans, packed too tightly to even raise their weapons, are surrounded. In a single afternoon, somewhere between 50,000 and 70,000 Romans die. Senators, consuls, generals, knights. Their gold rings are scooped from the dead and poured into a bronze bowl in Carthage as proof of the victory. It is the worst single-day military defeat in Roman history. It will not be surpassed for nearly 1,000 years. Imagine being in Rome in the days after Cannae. The city is in a state of terror, unlike anything it has experienced. Hannibal is 15 days' march to the south. His cavalry has ridden to within sight of the city walls. The roads are clogged with refugees. Mothers dedicate their jewelry to temples. The Senate debates whether to abandon Rome entirely. And then, Rome does something extraordinary. It does not collapse. A dictator is appointed, Quintus Fabius Maximus. His strategy is radical in its restraint. No more open battles. No more feeding Hannibal the pitched engagement he has proven he can win. Instead, shadow him, cut off his foragers, deny him supplies, bleed the army through skirmishes. Let Italy's hills and seasons do the work. The Romans mock Fabius as cunctator, the delayer, but the strategy begins to work. Hannibal, for all his genius on the battlefield, faces a problem he cannot solve with tactics. He is deep in enemy territory, thousands of miles from home, winning every battle and losing the war. He needs reinforcements, he needs supplies, he needs his brother. Back in Carthage, the political reality is complicated. The Barcid family controls the army in Spain and the loyalty of the soldiers, but the Senate is divided. A powerful faction led by Hanno the Great opposes the war, not from cowardice, but from mercantile calculation. Carthage built its empire through trade, not conquest. Every year of war is a year of lost commerce. Ships that could carry grain are carrying soldiers, or silver that could buy alliances is funding sieges. At this time, the decision is made to send reinforcements to Spain, not to Hannibal in Italy. This single choice will define the outcome. Hannibal's brother Hasdrubal is ordered to hold Spain against the Roman forces pressing from the north. Year after year, Hannibal maneuvers through Italy, wintering in Capua, raiding as far south as Sicily's doorstep, but unable to strike the killing blow. The Italian allies he expected to defect from Rome. Most of them stay loyal. In 207 BC, Hasdrubal finally attempts what his brother did in 218. He crosses the Alps with another army, heading for a rendezvous in northern Italy that could change everything. If the two Barcid brothers unite their forces, Rome faces annihilation. I can't help but picture the moment Roman scouts intercept Hasdrubal's messengers carrying letters describing the planned junction point. The Senate acts immediately. Two consular armies, normally required to operate independently, coordinate in secret. They converge on Hasdrubal at the Metaurus River before Hannibal can reach him. The Battle of the Metaurus, 207 BC. Hasdrubal fights brilliantly, but the terrain isolates his left wing. He is flanked. His Gallic allies break. His Spanish veterans hold until they are simply overwhelmed. Hasdrubal himself, seeing the battle lost, rides directly into the Roman lines and is killed. The Romans cut off his head and catapulted into Hannibal's camp. Hannibal recognizes his brother's face. By ancient account, he says only, "Now I know the fate of Carthage." He retreats south to the toe of Italy and he waits. He has been in Italy for 11 years. He is undefeated in the field, and he is finished. The war now moves to Africa. A young Roman general, Publius Cornelius Scipio, who watched his father die at the Trebia River as a teenager, has spent years in Spain, systematically dismantling Carthaginian power there. By 206 BC, Hispania is lost to Carthage. In 204 BC, Scipio crosses to Africa and begins raiding Carthaginian territory directly. The Carthaginian Senate panics. They recall Hannibal from Italy. For the first time in 15 years, he sets foot on African soil. The two greatest generals of the age face each other at Zama in October 202 BC. Hannibal arrays his war elephants in front. Scipio has prepared for them. His infantry maniples open lanes for the elephants to pass through harmlessly. The superior Roman and Numidian cavalry rout Hannibal's horsemen. And when the cavalry returns to strike the Carthaginian rear, even Hannibal's veteran Italian survivors cannot hold. Carthage is defeated. For the first and only time in his life, Hannibal Barca loses a battle. The peace terms of 201 BC are punishing. Carthage surrenders its war elephants. Its fleet is reduced to 10 ships. It must pay 10,000 silver talents over 50 years. Most devastatingly, it cannot wage war against any nation without Rome's permission. In one stroke, Carthage is transformed from an empire into a client state. The city still breathes. The markets still trade. But the sword is gone from its hand. What had once been an empire of the sea now became something quieter, and in its quietness, something remarkable. In the years following Zama, Carthage turned inward, without an army to feed, without fleets to maintain, without the costs of empire. The city channeled its extraordinary commercial energy into trade and agriculture. Within a generation, Carthage was generating wealth again, not through conquest, but through the olive groves and grain fields of the African hinterland, through the cedar of the Maghreb Mountains, through the purple dye extracted from murex shells along the coast. Hannibal himself, now a private citizen, ran for and won election as a suffete, one of Carthage's chief magistrates, in 196 BC. He reformed the city's finances, audited the corrupt treasurer class, and directed the war indemnity payments in ways that strained Rome far less than anticipated. The Roman Senate watched him with suspicion, bordering on obsession. At their demand, Hannibal was accused of conspiring with the Seleucid king Antiochus III. Facing arrest, he fled into exile, first to the court of Antiochus, then to Bithynia in Asia Minor. He would never see Carthage again. Back in Carthage, the city adapted. Trade expanded into West Africa, along routes that Hanno the Navigator had pioneered centuries before. Mago the Carthaginian wrote a 28-volume agricultural treatise so valued by Rome that the Roman Senate, after the city's later destruction, ordered it translated into Latin, essentially preserving Carthaginian agricultural knowledge in the language of its destroyers. By 200 BC, the focal point of our story, Carthage exists in a kind of suspended twilight. The walls still stand, thick and double, stretching nearly 20 miles around the peninsula. The Kothon harbor still bustles with ships. The Forum still fills with voices. Children still run through streets named for ancient gods. The Tophet, the sacred precinct near the harbor, still receives offerings to Tanit and Baal-Hamon. But the Numidian king, Massinissa, armed with Roman backing and Roman permission, begins encroaching on Carthaginian farmlands to the west. Each time Carthage protests to Rome, Rome rules in Massinissa's favor. Each time Carthage mounts even a defensive response, Rome threatens intervention. The peace treaty of 201 BC has become not a settlement, but a slow strangling. Rome has learned what the battlefield could not teach, that Carthage can be defeated without soldiers. It can be defeated with lawyers and time. In the years between 200 BC and the final reckoning, Carthage demonstrates something that military defeat alone cannot extinguish: the power of a civilization to regenerate itself. By 170 BC, the city has paid off much of its war indemnity early, a fact that alarms Rome more than any military buildup could. Wealth, even without swords, is power. The Roman senator Marcus Porcius Cato returns from a delegation to Carthage and begins every speech in the Senate, on any subject, keen on any day, with the same 4 words: Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. His obsession is not irrational. He has seen what the city still is, its markets, its walls, its people, its capacity for regeneration. He has seen figs so fresh they could only have been picked days before, proof of Carthage's proximity to Rome's own shores. He understands that a Carthage at peace is still a Carthage capable of war, given the right generation and the right moment. In 149 BC, Rome manufactures a pretext. Carthage, finally pushed beyond endurance by Numidian raids that Rome has consistently sanctioned, raises an army in self-defense, technically violating the 201 BC treaty. Rome declares war. The Third Punic War begins. For 3 years, Carthage resists. The final siege, under Scipio Aemilianus, lasts through 147 and 146 BC. Street by street, house by house, the city is taken. When the last defenders are killed, the buildings are razed. The harbor walls are pulled into the sea. The peninsula of Carthage is left silent. The city that stood for 7 centuries, that controlled the Western Sea, that nearly brought Rome to its knees through the genius of one man, is gone. What began as a new city, built by Phoenician settlers on a wind-swept African peninsula, ends not with a battle lost, but with a civilization deliberate unmade. Carthago delenda est. And so it was.